the secrets to the Johnnie Walker Blue Label.
So for that depth, we create what we call a sherry style vatting. So I'm going to say we should do a fist bump, but there'll be caviar everywhere.
Complex, very nuanced, like explosion of flavor happening.
Whiskey and Johnnie Walker resonate with so many people.
Can we request you to please find a seat for yourself so that we can get the evening going? I'd like to begin with a public announcement for everyone. The guest of honor of this evening, Dr. Emma Walker, is not related to the iconic brand called Johnnie Walker that she will be representing here today. So if we can lay that to rest, that'll be amazing. All right, hi everyone. My name is Aprajita. I take care of culture and partnerships here at Diageo India and work very closely with the brand Johnnie Walker. We are delighted to have you here with us today as we welcome Dr. Emma Walker to India. We were surprised when we learned today that this is her very first visit to India. When I was thinking about it today, earlier, I thought maybe it's time to reconsider the master in the master blender to be able to make it something a little bit more gender neutral to kind of like, taking inspiration from the pioneer here. We have planned this evening to be able to reimagine the conversation around the brand Johnnie Walker. And we have like a beautiful immersion planned for you with conversations spanning everything Scotch, a beautifully paired dinner, as well as a tasting of Blue Label, as well as the elusive umami. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to the very awesome Swati Sharma of the Dram Club to take it away.
We all know that there are very few whiskies in this world that are as synonymous to rarity and craftsmanship as the Johnnie Walker Blue Label. And this evening is all about that. But what we do not know is that there are very few people who actually know the secrets to the Johnnie Walker Blue Label as intimately as Dr. Emma Walker. So today, for the next about 40 to 45 minutes, we will try and understand what makes Blue Label so iconic, what really made Emma become the whiskey blender and the master blender that she is. We will also taste whiskey, so yes, that is a part of Don't worry about that. And we'll try and understand from her what really inspires her and what really brings about her creative genius and what does she envision as the future Blue Label, the icon that we know. So Emma, for the second time today, welcome to India.
Thank you so much.
Yes. You are the, Aprajita mentioned, you are the first female master blender. And I will put that disclaimer that because of that stature that you have, I'm a bit nervous and I might fumble. But tell us about your journey into the world of whiskey. And when is it that you felt like this is what I was meant to do?
So my journey into the world of whiskey has been very much accidental. There's been a lot of good luck and getting to know people and making the right moves. So I studied chemistry at the University of Edinburgh. I then did a PhD in organic chemistry at the University of Sheffield, partly because I didn't really know what I wanted to do and was trying to put off being a proper grown-up at that point for a while. When I finally finished that, I moved back up to Scotland and I was looking about thinking I need to get a proper job. I've got to start thinking about a pension, start thinking about the future, be a grown-up. And I was looking at Diageo. So where I live, Diageo worked very closely with the community. We're a really important part of that give back, made sure that they helped different people, which was really important for what I was wanting to do. So I was looking for jobs. I saw a job advertised as a project scientist, thought that sounds interesting. Went along to this little place that I'd never heard of called Mint Street. And when I turned up, you had Dr. Jim Beveridge, you had Maureen Robinson, there was Keith Law, there was Caroline Martin. And even I, as a whiskey novice, was like, these people are big names. They're quite important. I can work in whiskey. I can do that with chemistry. Because when I was at university, if you did chemistry, you worked in pharmaceuticals or you worked in oil. They were sort of the two options at that time. So, I mean, it was one of the best interviews I've had. It was so interesting and enjoyable. And they gave me a bottle of whiskey at the end of the interview. So I made the vow that if I don't get this job, I'm coming back to get a job at Diageo because they're brilliant. And they offered me the job, which I was like, oh, I can't believe they've done that. So that was back in 2008 and I refused to leave. I've stayed working in whiskey ever since. So I've been so lucky. I spent time working with Jim and Maureen and everyone, learning about whiskey, doing the whiskey diploma. Just learning everything. At that point, we had nearly 10 million casks mature in whisky, so learning about that, how we blend, how you bring flavours together, where flavours created. I got the chance to go and work in industry, so I went to work I managed a quality lab at Cameron Bridge Distillery, so our biggest distillery. I managed Nakando Distillery. So my partner Dave, he was very chuffed that he got to tell everyone that his girlfriend was a distillery manager. Like, I think that was a high point for him. So I did that for a year, then came back to work back at the whisky team, which was always my plan. Then worked with Jim on innovation, so Johnnie Walker Ghost and Rare, Jane Walker, looked after Johnnie Walker Blue Label. So I helped to sort of hand select, make sure it was just as it should be. And then a few years later was asked to interview for the job of Johnnie Walker Master Blender. Against a few of my peers, my colleagues as well. So we were definitely determined that we were going to get the next Johnnie Walker Master Blender from within Diageo. So really nurturing talent to make sure it was coming through. And yeah, when I got offered the role, it's the first and only time that I swore at my manager because I didn't believe it and I thought they'd made a mistake. It then wasn't announced publicly for about 3 months because this was at the back end of COVID. So the opening of Johnnie Walker Experience in Edinburgh had been postponed. So they wanted to wait till that was opened to then announce that I was moving into the role. So I had about 3 months of going, have they changed their minds? Have they decided someone else should have the job? And then this will make you laugh. The night before it was going to be announced, I was just sat in the house, we're having a whiskey. And my partner Dave went, what are you going to do if the share price goes down when they announce you're the next Master Blender? I was like, that's support for you. It went up a bit, so I was quite happy.
I think share price going up is a good thing.
Yeah, we've got to keep praying for that.
All right. Emma, you are the first master blender, a female master blender that Johnnie Walker as a brand has had 200 years of its legacy and heritage, and I'm sure you are the role model of a lot of women in the industry. What does this role and being the first female master blender mean to you?
I mean, for me, when I got offered the role, when I moved into the role, for me it was really important to be the next Johnnie Walker Master Blender. Because I wanted it to be recognised that I was moving into the role because I was good at what I did and that I could do the role really credibly. And I think until I got to meet people that are from Diageo around the world, it hadn't really settled into my mind why being the first female Master Blender Johnnie Walker Master Blender was important. And I met some lovely colleagues from Central America and the Caribbean islands. And there was a lovely gentleman who he met me and he started crying. And I was like, oh God, I've not even said anything and I've already made him cry. And he told me that when he found out I was becoming the next Johnnie Walker Master Blender, he cried. He went home and he told his daughter, like he was so proud that he could go home and tell his daughters that the new Johnnie Walker Master Blender was going to be a woman. And so it was when I heard that, I was like, oh, this has got sort of a longer reach than I'm sort of thinking about in my own Johnnie Walker lab bubble. But for us as a Master Blender, so I'm part of a team of 12, and we are actually responsible for all of Diageo's Scotch portfolio. So we look after the quality of Johnnie Walker, but also Buchanan's, Black and Whites. We look after all of Diageo's single malt portfolio as well. So the same people, you might have someone in the team might be working on Johnnie Walker one day, and then the next day they're looking after Lagavulin. So we look after all the blends, so we manage the quality of the blending operations. We make sure that the whiskies that have been laid down for the future are the right flavours and styles that the next generation of master blenders want to work with. There's whiskies we're creating today that we'll never get that will be there for someone to use in 20 years' time, in 30 years' time. We get to talk to lovely people like yourselves and to represent the rest of the team, the rest of the company in Scotland. But every day as a master blender involves nosing whiskey, tasting whiskey and talking about it with your colleagues.
So Emma, your job as a master blender, I'm sure a lot of it is in distillery warehouses, sampling, I think, millions of casks that Diageo holds, and then working with some of those samples in the blending room, in your lab, etc., everything. And Blue Label is just so rare. Johnnie Walker as a brand is such an iconic brand. It's the wide spectrum that it has, from Black Label to Blue Label. Does it ever, do you feel hurt that this is such a precious cask, I should save it for myself or I should give it to this blend?
Well, we do joke that sometimes there might be a bit of an arm wrestle in the team to go, is this going towards, so we're looking at a Port Ellen or a Talisker, it might be, should this go towards a single malt or should this be for Johnnie Walker? I fight dirty, so I managed to get a hold of the ones that I want. But what we do, and what we do for the company as well as for our whiskies, is we get to work with the inventory. So we've got more than 10 million casks maturing whiskey. And we get to work with that, get to know that inventory and make the right decisions about when's the right time to use that whiskey. So some of it we want to keep for the future. And we have to make sure that we are doing that because we work with colleagues in marketing in different markets that we want to sell more of a certain whiskey now. We've got to take a longer view and go, how are we going to make XR21 in a few years and Johnnie Walker 18? So we get to be the villains for some people where we stop them from selling everything at 12 or 15 and say we need to think about the longer term future. So that's what we're always thinking about, what are the flavours, what are the flavour points we're going to need at all the different ages for all the different brands that we work with.
Blending is as much an art as a science, like you had mentioned earlier when we were speaking. What is your philosophy when it comes to, let's say, blending a Johnnie Walker Black Label versus a Blue Label? And like, what goes in your mind when you're selecting?
So a lot of our team, we're a team of 12, and I think most of us are geeky scientists. We've got one environmental archaeologist, so he's skewing it. But we all have a basis in science, and that science helps us understand how the flavour is created, what's happening in distilling, what's happening in maturation. And that helps us also understand how the different flavours come together, how they combine and interact and become greater than some other parts. So when we're thinking about Johnnie Walker Black Label, we were talking earlier that if you think about a boring spreadsheet, across the top you've got different casks. So you've got ex-sherry casks, you've got ex-bourbon casks, you've got refill casks, you've got all your distilleries. When you put a recipe together, it starts to look like a contour map, a heat map, because you have different ratios, different volumes of all the different whiskies. And every time you make a Johnnie Walker Black Label, that contour map is slightly different because you're using different combinations, different ratios. Because we talk about a recipe, but it's more that we have recipe guidelines and we understand how we work within those guidelines of different character styles, different maturation. But with Johnnie Walker Black Label, it is all about balance. We want something that's really balanced and has got a depth of flavour. So we're thinking about how do you balance that lovely smoke with sweet vanilla? How do you balance the rich and the fresh? How do you make sure it's got vibrancy, but it's got the depth that you need? And that's where Johnnie Walker Black Label it's a wonderful dram, but it also works so well in cocktails. Like it's a bartender's favourite because you can complement the flavours or you can contrast the flavours. It just works as a great ingredient and serves as well. With Johnnie Walker Blue Label, we want to have this rolling waves of flavour. So when we're thinking about making that, you need to have the depth, you need rich. So we actually use what we call vattings. And if we get to go to the archive, so the archive at Mint Street is just over the road from where we work. So we get to go and annoy our archivists, go and look through the old blending books, look through all the old stock books, look at what's been created before us to see how do we work, do we still work in the same way, how do we think about whiskey making, what's our philosophy? And it's really interesting, you can see that there's so many similarities. We will use Excel now, which for me is a godsend because my handwriting is not nearly good enough to go into the archive. I struggle to read it sometimes, so I would definitely say the computers are helping us, but we still blend in the same way. And if you look at the old Highland blends, they would use what they called a Highland vatting, and that was a flavour building block, essentially, where they pre-blended to certain whiskies together to create a style that then became the heart of the blend that they then brought individual casks together with Old Highland. And we do exactly the same in Johnnie Walker Blue Label. So for that depth, we create what we call a sherry style vatting. So whiskies that have been matured in ex-sherry or PX Oloroso seasoned casks that have got richness, that have got raisins, taste of raisins and spice, they've got a long finish. And that's so important when you try a Blue Label, you get that depth. And so we use a portion of that vatting in every single drop of Johnnie Walker Blue Label. We also have what we call a rare and aged vatting, which was actually the inspiration for the Ghost and Rare series. So this is a vatting of some of our oldest whiskies, our rarest whiskies like Port Ellen, Port Dundas, Brora. We've got some aged Singleton, we've got some aged grain whiskies in there. And again, that vatting comes together and marries, and we use a small portion of that in every single batch of Johnnie Walker Blue Label that we make. But we then combine that with some aged grains, which we're talking about, give a beautiful texture and almost a lusciousness, but also with vibrant, youthful whiskies as well. Because when you pick up a glass of Blue Label, it opens up to you. It doesn't have to be coaxed. You've got different layers of flavours. You've got the vibrancy, but the depth. You've got the smoke, you've got the sweetness. And that was so important when Jim and Maureen created Blue Label back in 1980. They wanted to be luxury, but they also wanted it to talk about blending artistry and how do we pick the right casks at the right point in time.
I have to say I rediscovered Blue Label after going through a phase of liking cask strength whiskies and like very boisterous whiskies. And I think I've rediscovered my flavor profile to be more subtle, more easy, and I genuinely like Blue Label a lot. And I'm sure every time you've had an interview, people have asked you what is the exact recipe of a Blue Label.
No, that's exactly it. And part of the reason that we don't say we can't give the recipe is we need the freedom to be able to pick the right whiskies at the right time. If we were to label it down and say it's exactly this and that then backs us into a corner. That if when we're making Blue Label, we want some tea in it, but we don't have that available because the distillery was closed for a bit. We need to be able to have the flexibility to move and use different combinations. And that's part of the joy of blending. That's part of the reason that we have the team of 12, so that we can bring together the knowledge and experience that we have to do that.
Emma, in your personal opinion, if you had to, let's say, personify Blue Label, the blend, how would that be a person?
I'm just thinking about some of the people that I've met today. I think it would be someone that comes across as being quite suave, quite calm, but is the centre of the party as well.
Something like George Clooney?
Oh, that'll do.
Perfect. But on a serious note, Blue Label has fans across the world. Like there are people who swear by Blue Label. Yeah. In fact, one of the reasons I rediscovered Blue Label and started liking it so much is one person here. I will introduce him to you later. But what do you think is the reason why people resonate with Blue Label so much?
Well, I think we're so lucky, and that definitely comes to life when I'm here in India, is with Johnnie Walker, we have got that history and heritage. There's almost that recognisability. People have a connection with the sort of brand, with the story, and it really ties together. And then when you get to try Blue Label, and as I say, Jim and Warren created it to be this sort of luxury experience. I do find, and even, I mean, we get old and cynical. We're a bunch of scientists making whiskey. And so you think, oh, the stories that we talk about, it must just be a bit of marketing. But then you pick up a glass of Blue Label, and it instantly transports you. You feel relaxed, like you've got a bit of a luxury of time. You can take a moment to actually smell the whiskey, to enjoy the whiskey, and sort of appreciate everything that's happening there. And I think that's what is amazing about Johnnie Walker Blue Label, Johnnie Walker and whiskey, is it just has that ability to sort of transport you, but also become part of you, part of your family's stories, part of the celebrations as well. And I think that's what makes it so interesting. It has a heart as well.
So Emma, everybody knows Johnnie Walker stands for heritage, tradition, luxury, innovation, craftsmanship, culture. What is that one thing that you think defines it?
See, whenever you say one thing, my brain goes to say two things. Because I was going to say quality and consistency. We were talking earlier that consistency is so important. If someone picks up a bottle of Blue Label, a glass of Blue Label here, we want it the same as if you have a glass of Blue Label in New York or in Scotland. So we need it to be consistent. And we were saying sometimes consistency can be seen as being boring or being a bit dull. But I think that's what really shows the blending artistry, like the skill of bringing this together, is being able to have something that tastes the same no matter where you're drinking it. Every time you open the bottle, you get what you expect. But also one of the things that's interesting about it is you might perceive different things in there. How you taste whiskey, what you pick up that time, very much depends on who you're drinking it with, the occasion that you have. So tonight for me, this might taste very different because this is slightly terrifying, sitting in front of a group of whiskey aficionados waiting to be heckled at some point. I was joking with someone earlier saying if you have a glass of Johnnie Walker Blue Label watching the rugby, so my sport is rugby, and if you have a glass of Johnnie Walker Blue Label and you're watching the rugby and Scotland's won, it can taste quite different to if Scotland's is lost because you've got a different emotional resonance going on. Especially if we're playing England, but we'll not get to that.
Because we spoke so much about Blue Label, Emma, it was only right that we taste it right away.
If not, it's just taunting.
Yeah, I agree. It's too much of teasing for everybody. So why don't you take us through your ritual of Blue Label?
So the way my predecessor, Dr. Jim Beveridge, would always get you to drink a Johnnie Walker Blue Label would be to take a sip of ice cold water first, because that cleanses the palate, it sort of saturates it, it hydrates the palate as well. But yeah, you have your glass, and it's just, obviously you have to go through the phase of cheers, slan shiva.
Slan shiva.
You have to make eye contact as well, it's very important. we take a smell, we might as well take a sip because everyone's going to do it anyway. And I just love when you take that nose and it just wraps itself around you. Like I do genuinely feel transported. I mean, I love the effects that we use with almost that rolling wave, that sparkle, because that's what I have in my head now. Whenever I nose Blue Label, as you can almost imagine that wave, it's just undulating. But you have that beautiful, there's a lovely sweetness, and then you get that sort of sherry deepness. You got that smoke just sort of whispers through. So this is a really traditional Scotch. It has got the smoke, but the smoke is tempered. It wraps itself around and comes through. We were talking before as well, you get a lovely sort of slightly rose petal notes. There's hazelnuts in there. It reminds me a lot of Turkish Delight. All my taste notes go back to food, go back to sweets in some way. That's my experience, that's what I tie it back to, that on my granny's kitchen. And then to taste, like you just get that richness, it's beautiful. You get those raisins, you get almost chewy apricots coming through. But then there's a vibrancy, there's a little bit of acidity, it's like fresh cut Granny Smith apples. There's honey in there, we talked about the honey in there as well. And so it's got, for me, it just has a lovely balance, but it moves between all those different flavour points. And every time you pick it up, every time you take a sip, you get something new that comes through. And it's great if you actually have that with food as well, because it brings out different flavours in the foods. And then when you go back to the whisk, you get different notes, different flavours that are accentuated in that as well.
What kind of food do you like with Blue Label? I mean,
well, I'm just looking because we've got some beautiful chocolates. But I mean, chocolate is always such a great match for whiskey. It works so well. You've got richness, you've got sweetness, you've got creaminess. It is fantastic. Blue Label also with cheese, so I'm a big dairy fan.
Okay.
Different cheeses, especially with a lovely blue cheese, it's just fantastic. And I say that as well, I know there's lots of people that don't like blue cheese, but that means it's more for me at a whiskey tasting, if other people don't like it. And it's also the classic with sort of seafood, with prawns, with oysters, with smoked salmon. Just fantastic.
Hi, Emma. So 2 questions. The legacy is so strong because it's perfect. In my book, it's one of the most perfect blends. What's the stress level which you have? Because you've done 2 things. You've done 2 things as I know. One is the umami. And I just tried this extraordinaire, which is just the travel thing, which is the cognac cask thing which you did. I would love to for you to do something in the higher peat level, the smoke thing, if that's on your mind. We would love to hear that. But what's the stress level which you go through? Because you're dealing with a perfect product in my book. And then, you have to experiment, which you're doing. Like I said, I think in the last 2 years, you've come up with 2 different expressions. What goes through your mind?
It's really interesting. I would say for the first couple of years of my 10 years Johnnie Walker Master Blender, I was joking earlier saying that I would have a paper bag in my pockets. Every time you sort of thought about the enormity of what you're doing, you would just have a panic attack and have to go and sit in a dark room. Again, that's part of the reason that we have the team of 12. So we're sharing that across the sort of whole team. We're all working together to think about what are we doing and the reasons for doing that. It's really interesting because we want to stay true to the heart of Johnnie Walker. And it's really important that we continue to make amazing brands like Johnnie Walker Red Label and Black Label, Blue Label. But we also need to innovate. And if you look back at the heritage, innovation's always been at the heart. And that is what's made Johnnie Walker so special. From looking at the way that the whiskey came out around the world, working with ship's captains, the bottle so it stands out, the slanted label, but then also with the whiskies that we're looking at. Even if you go back to the shop in Kilmarnock back in the sort of 1820s, the whiskies were always made for a customer. So whenever we're making something, we are making whiskies for a customer. So we work with our colleagues across Diageo, so the Johnnie Walker brand team, with our innovation partners, with market partners and we need to have a brief. So we need to actually have a reason for making a whiskey. And we have to have a whiskey, we have to make it for a specific consumer, a specific reason. If we were to just keep on making whiskies that we like and then find a spot for them to go into, the style of whiskies we make would become narrower and narrower and narrower because we would stop challenging ourselves. So we would just sit in our comfort zone and make whiskies that we wanted to drink all the time. And life would become really dull. And it's when you get challenged to do something that takes you out of your comfort zone is when you really you learn something new and you understand something different. And so that's why it's really important that we have a brief. So we always are looking at who's going to be drinking the whiskey, why are they going to be drinking the whiskey? The really unromantic part of what price point will it be? What volume is it going to be? Because all these help us to look at that inventory of more than 10 million casks to pick out the right whiskies to use. Because we are a business as well, so we have to think about how we're doing this in the right way. We also have to have the challenge of how do we keep making sure that we can make Lagavulin 16 and Talisker 10 and all the other whiskies that we look at from the same inventory. And that inventory is changing every day. It's a living, breathing beast. And that, again, is part of what makes it really interesting, slightly terrifying. Because if we make a decision now, that has impact for the next 50 years. So we might use a whiskey today that we'll get asked about in 10, 20, 30 years' time of why didn't you keep that? We could use that now. Because all the people that helped us make that decision will have left the business and retired or moved on to other roles. So yeah, there's a lot of, I would say there's a lot of trepidation, but it is still the most interesting job I've ever had. And knowing that you almost have the support of that history and heritage and what's come before, and because we've been so involved in innovation, it's always part of our DNA and what we do. So if we stopped innovating, we wouldn't be able to keep making Johnnie Walker because the world changes around us. We have to make sure that we're in the right place for the future as well.
Since you spoke so much about innovation and creativity, and you earlier said that a lot of your inspiration, food, you also like music.
Yes.
So tell us, like, where do you find your creatives from? And is there anything outside, let's say, the whiskey world that inspired you to create something?
I mean, we're so lucky that we have inspiration from everywhere. I mean, I've just got back from Toronto last week where I was there for Diageo's World Class. So it's the bartender competition. Seeing how people work with our whiskies, so Johnnie Walker Black Label, Singleton, with our gins, with our vodkas, and seeing what they're doing with those products, how they're being drank in different countries around the world, what these amazing creative bartenders are doing with those, and what ingredients they're mixing them with, is an inspiration because we're understanding more about what consumers like, what our customers like, how are they drinking it. I think for all of us, like we were talking before about art, about history, about music, like these are all great inspirations. Like, I mean, if you think about making whiskey, you are creating a whiskey, even if it's a single malt, you're putting different together. Unless it's a single cask whiskey, you are putting different parts of the whiskey together. So in the same way that you build an orchestra, you build a piece of music or a beautiful piece of art, we're doing exactly the same thing. You're thinking about what do you want the end structure to be and thinking about what are the different parts that you put together to create that. I've been very lucky that I've got to work with Olivia Rouston very recently, along with Raoul Mishri, so great, amazing designers. And it's been great sort of thinking about how they build creation, works of art, creations. They think about the structure. There's a lot of things that are happening in there that aren't seen to give that overall outfit and shape and appearance. And that is very similar again to Scotch whisky, where there's different things that might be whiskies that you don't pick up as a predominant flavour, but they are playing a huge supporting role and bringing different aspects together. And that again is what's really interesting, is to understand how it all comes together. The other way that we look at it is also just culture. So like designers, the film industry, like everything is an inspiration. Looking at the view outside the hotel, we've got the beautiful water and the hay, like all of this is an inspirational starting point. And so sometimes when you pick up whiskey, that's what I'll be picturing, is I can almost sort of smell it. You can think about everything it's making you think about, especially the heat. The heat will see.
Yes, the heat can be, coming from Scotland, I think the Indian heat can be a bit much. But Emma, blending is a lot about, of course, like you mentioned, a brief coming to you in terms of the requirement, the casks are available to you, but a large part of blending is also about having the right palate, right? So as a blender, how do you keep your palate imaginative? Does it get mundane? Like for me, sometimes comfort is just drinking the same whiskey again and again.
Yeah.
So how do you keep that?
I mean, part of this is, so I have had people ask me when I was like, so if you're a master blender, do you have to stop eating garlic? Are you not allowed to eat curry? And I'm like, no, I'm a larger lady. This takes maintenance. But also it's really important that we try different cuisines, that we try different foods, different drinks, different serves, that we keep on learning, we keep on experiencing new things, because that's how you build new neural pathworks in your brain to sort of build that sort of memory of flavors, of texture, of aromas. So it's really important that we do that. So again, that's why World Class is so important. We get to come on visits like this. So I'm learning as much as I can. I'm writing lots of things down that I can take back to the whiskey team as well. So I get to travel and then go and talk to them. It's the same when other members of the team get to travel. We take back the experiences that we've had and use that as inspiration for us all. So I think being able to build, try different things, try different serves, talk to people, understand what other people are trying and tasting as well is really important. And as I said, all my taste notes go back to the sweets at some point, so they're very, very important.
Which brings me to my next most important question of the evening. You created a blend called the Elusive Umami, which is again, umami is the fifth flavor, inspired by a lot of Asian cooking. And till I saw this whiskey, at least in my imagination, umami couldn't be a flavor that you'd ever get in. So where did that inspiration come from?
So myself and it was George Harper in the whiskey team that was creating this, given the task of creating an umami blue label. So you sit there and we did the normal, we go to Google and go, what exactly is umami? So you see a lot of conversations about glutamic acid. And it's all, and lots of savoury. So we were immediately thinking about certain whiskies. So we were thinking about whiskies like Mortlach, like Benrinnes, where we've got a bit more of that sort of savoury palate in there. But we were very conscious that we only had a very sort of British view of what umami means. And we wanted to be very culturally sensitive as well. So when we were told that we're going to be working with Chef Kobayashi, we were so relieved. We were also a little bit starstruck to get to work with this amazing artist with numerous Michelin stars, an absolute genius. So we started working on pulling different whiskies together to create sort of flavour building blocks so we could go and meet him and start to create a whiskey together. So it was really, really interesting. He obviously speaks Japanese, he speaks perfect French. Me and George spoke English. So we also learned how to communicate in this very creative process through amazing interpreters as well. And a lot of very expressive hand waving as well as we're going through. But we learned so much from Chef Kobayashi. One of the things that he told us that stuck with us was, when you think about something as being umami, it means deliciousness. It's that thing, you know, when you try something and it's delicious and all you want to do is have another bite, is have another sip, is try it again. And it's also something that's almost mouth-watering, that it brings all these different aspects together. But he talked very much about how he builds his menu, how he builds his meals. He talked also about his experience sort of growing up in Japan and how he thinks about flavours, like the acidity, does it come from the earth, does it come from the sea? So it was really interesting started to put the whiskies together, sort of getting notes from him, and we're building it together. And we're saying, we started building the whiskey and we got so far through and we started adding the smoke in. And we decided we were going to use Kalila, because Kalila we talked to in Johnnie Walker Blue Label. So we're thinking about that thread back. When we used the Kalila, it made it too much from the sea. It was almost too deep, it was too big. And he wanted to be a sort of drier smoke. So we unpicked it, reblended, and started using some Talisker. And that had it just right, because it was slightly more acidic, slightly more dry. And what was really interesting, it was like a light bulb moment of thinking about our whiskies, the world we know so well, but thinking about it in terms of a chef. So thinking about the sort of salt, fatty, oil, like all these different things, and just really coming to the forefront. And it was such a unique experience. It was absolutely amazing. But also it was great to see how many parallels were between our worlds and Chef Kobayashi's world as well, and how we could make that work and how we could talk about it.
And obviously we are going to get a glass of the umami to taste, because this is the right time to do it. But as people are getting their glasses, how do you think umami complements the original Blue Label?
So again, when we were tasked with making an umami whiskey, we were sort of thinking about, right, it needs to be umami, but it also needs to be inherently Scotch. Now, when you think about Scotch whiskey, there is a sweetness there from the sort of maturation style from the oak. So that's what we had to almost get right in our heads, is how do we work in the two different worlds and bring them together?
Might want to just take everybody through this ritual of tasting the umami with the caviar.
Well, first of all, we've got the sorbet. So we've got this amazing sorbet, which is so dramatic when it came out. It was absolutely amazing. So we have the sorbet there as a palate cleanser. So if you'd like to take a little spoon of the sorbet, oh, that's amazing.
Very cold.
It's so lemony, a little bit salty as well. So I'll give everyone a moment to just have that sorbet. Now, what we did was, sorbet, just cleanse the palate, just clear it as well, and get us ready for the umami experience. So when we started making umami, we were talking about the perfect serve. Tim Philip Johansson, who's the Johnnie Walker brand ambassador, the global brand ambassador, he's an amazing gentleman, but he was like, we should pair it with caviar, this will be fantastic. And he was like, you know how to eat caviar. So he had me up doing tasting, and I'm like going, I've never had caviar in my whole life. I come from a council house, you've got to come and tell me how to eat. So not only did we get to taste great whiskey, we got to learn a new posh way of working with food. So the reason that we have the caviar and we've got the whiskey is, as we said, when you're thinking about a food pairing experience, when you go from the whiskey to the foods, you get something different and something additional to the food. And then when you go from the food to the whiskey, it brings out something different in the whiskey. So with the caviar, I mean, should we go for the caviar and then go for the whiskey? So I'm going to say we should do a fist bump, but there'll be caviar everywhere. We're just waiting until everyone has their drink and their caviar.
Has everyone received their caviar? Okay.
So what we do is you eat the caviar from your hand. The reason you have it on your hand is it warms it up to room temperature, so that you get an explosion of flavour and saltiness there. Cheers.
Cheers.
I'm covered in caviar.
This is like a true umami experience. I've never tried umami with a caviar before.
It's just so interesting because it's the caviar. Sorry, there's caviar everywhere. This is the umami, the second glass that's come out. So when we tried this, when we were blending this with Chef Kobayashi, on the nose, this made me think about, he started talking about his experience of growing up in Japan in the mountainside. And so if you nose this, you think about going out into sort of a cold mountainside. It's very sort of damp, it's earthy. You've got the mist around you. Then the sun starts to come out, it starts to warm up, it gets sweeter, you can smell the wood, you can smell the greenness. We're saying it's almost like petrichor, it's like sunshine after the rain. You get a freshness note, an ozone note. Then you start to smell this wood smoke comes through. So it's like someone's set up a campfire just over the other side of the mountain. And that's what you kind of get on when you try it, like on the nose, it has all those notes. And then the taste for me, when I first tried this without the caviar, I just get a juiciness, like it's just luscious. And we've got some really high-aged sort of Port Dundas in there. We've got some just beautiful aged grain whiskey that has, it's succulent. It's got a beautiful texture. It's full of berries and sweetness. And then you start to get the savoury notes coming through in there. You start to get, it's like you've been cooking meats in the oven. So you've got all the meat juices have come out and you're just heating that up with sort of berries and making the meat jus. You're putting the salt and pepper in there. So you've got a bit of mortlack, you've got a bit of Talisker coming through. You've got the berries, you've got that from the Glenord, the different whiskies we have in there. So you're bringing all of that together. So you get this beautiful umami, you get the savoury notes, but it's perfectly balanced with the sweetness and the fruitiness of Scotch whiskey. So it just works so well. And again, it's great at getting to try the caviar as well. But again, I'll take no taste.
Yeah, I think a lot of people would have tried the umami for the first time, maybe because I hear a lot of chatter, is this umami and it's great, and yes. I tried it with the caviar for the first time and I think it's an experience I'll not forget.
And I've got, like I said, caviar
I may not have the
everywhere.
luxury of having umami with caviar every time, but I'll definitely remember this one. But I think my first impression of the umami was when I was doing a tasting, and it was like very juicy and very intense, like obviously a departure from the classic Blue Label.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like very complex, very nuanced, like explosion of flavor happening. So I think for me, that's what kind of umami stands for. Really.
And it really has that savouriness in there. Like it has got, like I said, we use Benrinnes, we've got a little bit of mortlack in there. You really get that sort of slightly meaty, and then it's also, like I said, Talisker is like salt and pepper in there. It just brings out more, or reveals more. And that smoke is like seasoning. So the smoke then actually makes the whiskey fruitier and sweeter. It's like it reveals more of the other flavours that are there. So hopefully you'll agree, it really talks to, as Chef Kobayashi said, that deliciousness, that you have a sip and you want to try it again and try a little bit more and see what other flavours are in there as well.
Any questions about umami, the inspiration to Emma, we can take at this time before we move to the next section?
I mean, I'm quite happy to keep drinking whiskey and eating chocolate.
He has a question.
So Emma, I know the Blue Label has got this waft of smoke. Is there anything in the works amp up the smoke with the special edition?
Sorry, say that last bit again.
So there's a waft of original. You're doing experiment cognac.
Yeah.
Is there something?
Yeah, of course. Well, it was really interesting with the whiskies that we created with Olivia Rouston, where for the vaults, so the seasons expressions that we did, the spring, summer, fall, winter. That was a very small number, so we just did 25 bottles of each. But we used Port Ellen as the main sort of source of smoke in there, but we were using it a different way in each of the whiskies. So in the spring edition, we used it very sort of lightly, so you almost had that sort of minerality. Like you could imagine you're on the beach at Isla, and we wanted to really talk to that sort of petrichor and the freshness and the mineralness. But by the time you got to the winter one, we used it a little bit more intensively, because what that's talked to. You know, when you think about celebration times, when we all come together and you've got the fire, so whether it's bonfire or it's a coal fire, you're all gathering together, you're all sort of currying in. So you've got beautiful citrus notes in there, but you've definitely got that, there's a smoke fire happening somewhere. And it was great seeing that transition through the flavours and being able to sort of mimic the flavours of the seasons. And when I say the flavours of the seasons, it was very much a UK-centric viewpoint, where the summer was much warmer than the spring. But yeah, being able to play with it in different ways and show how when you use a smoky whiskey, it either makes, if you use it at a certain level, it makes the whiskey, the M whiskey very smoky, or you use it sparingly to bring out different flavours. So it was almost like a study in smokes. Again, we need to wait and see what's coming in the future. We always try and make our whiskies smoky, but we often work with partners around the world in Diageo that are like, that's going to be too smoky for some people. We need to think about the flavour profile overall, but we always try and get a bit of smoke in there, whether people want us to or not.
So, Emma, oh, there's one more question.
Hey, hi Emma.
Hello.
So in the near future, is it just going to be humans, or are we looking at robots making whiskey?
I would say there'll always be humans involved. So I was getting asked about, do we do chemical analysis of the whiskies? And we do. We've always used tools to help us understand more about the science of what's happening in the whiskey. But we are making whiskey for people to drink and to smell. So I think it's really important, and I'm also talking myself into a longer job here as well. It's really important that we always have human blenders there as well, because we get to reflect our consumer base as much as we can in Scotland, and sort of think about what are people experiencing, what are they trying when they're trying our whiskies. So we will use the techniques, we'll use analytical skills, we'll use machine learning to help us understand all the data we have from all those millions of casks of whiskey. But it will always have that human interaction to understand it and appreciate what does that mean to Johnnie Walker.
I have a question. Which of the blends has higher portion of Brora and Port Ellen?
So that'll be the KGV, the King George V. Yeah. If we think about the sort of core whiskies, once you go into like the Ghost and Rare series, that it sort of changes depending on what whiskies we're looking at. But I would definitely say KGV, with Johnnie Walker Blue Label, we also have those whiskies included in there, but the KGV has that sort of step up. And again, that ties with the flavour of that, like it has got that smoky intensity that makes it a favourite, again, of bartenders, of brand ambassadors. If you ever are out with a brand ambassador, they are likely to have a sample of Johnnie Walker KGV about their person. So just berate them until they give you that whiskey.
I have a question. You mentioned you had 10 million barrels.
More than 10 million barrels, yeah.
So when does the world run out of whiskey?
Well,
We hear of some springs sort of depleting or stopping.
I mean, we always have challenges every year at different some of our distilleries. So believe it or not, we do have some really warm summers in Scotland. We just don't like to tell people about it. We like to keep that to ourselves. But up in Speyside, we can be not quite as warm as it is here, but we can be up to sort of 25 plus. And we can have times of the year when the temperature of the cooling water is much higher than we need it to be. So it's really difficult for us to actually condense during distillation. So you can have different challenges getting the right quality style. We can also have where our cooling water, the source of it might dry up. So for some of our distilleries, we will take water from the Spey, but it's really important that we have to return it and make sure it's the same temperature that we took it out at. And if you think you've got distillery after distillery after distillery on the Spey, that can be quite a challenge, especially when it's getting warmer there. But if we get it wrong, then all the salmon fishers are going to come and hunt us down. So we have to make sure that we're protecting the salmon fishing on the River Spey as well. But at some of our distilleries, we're taking cooling water from other sources, so it might be a pool nearby. And sometimes that dries out, so you might have to do production until that gets replenished. And that is something that has been going on for, I would say, for decades. But it's something that we have to monitor, and we have to make sure that we're all thinking to the future. So it's probably something that we look at as the industry as a whole to make sure we're all working together in the right way. So hopefully the whiskey never runs out, but we might have to do slightly different things in the future to make it.
Different whiskey.
Emma, we are almost towards the last section of this conversation, and from the pattern of questions you've heard, and Emma, it's your first time in India.
Yes, it's
And
amazing.
from the pattern of questions people have asked, you now know we like peated whiskies. We already talked about a whiskey inspired by chicken tikka,
Yeah.
right? But jokes aside, India is the fastest growing whiskey market.
Yes.
What do we foresee the future of whiskey in India? How do you look at India as a whiskey market, and like quirks of the Indian consumer that you have noticed?
Well, I mean, India's been such an important market for us for a number of years, for decades even. What I love about this market, about India, is it is, in terms of thinking about, I'm going to go into a bit of marketing speak. In terms of thinking about India, it's such a mature market. Like, people know their whiskey, they like their whiskeys, they know what they like. But what we're also seeing now is you're getting people that are coming into whiskey that are wanting to try different things as well. So you're getting people where they want great whiskies, but they also want great experiences. People are starting to think more about serves as well. I think cocktails are a great way for us to explore what we can do with flavour. So when we're looking to create a Johnnie Walker, we are a global brand. So we're looking to create whiskies that will work really well in India, that will work really well in the US, that will work really well in Europe, that will work really well in Singapore and beyond. And that's what's really interesting. That's where we need to have these inputs from different people, from different customers, from different parts of the world to understand how do we make sure it's got the flavours that different customers are looking for. So that's why sometimes our whiskies might not be as smoky as you want them to be. Because we need to think about the range of different palates, different flavour styles that we're looking for. What I do love about how India embraces whiskey is, it's been lovely just to hear from people we've talked to and people that I've talked to in Scotland and across Diageo of how important whiskey and Johnnie Walker is to them and their family heritage and history, how it becomes almost, as you said before, parts of their celebration, part of their life. And I think it's really lovely seeing that history and heritage here and seeing how that reflects with the history and heritage of Johnnie Walker. But again, there is always that sort of fearless step forward. There's always that drive to what's next, what are we innovating in, what are we creating, what are we doing for the future. So I think you just see that sort of thread between India and Johnnie Walker that works so well. And there's so much inspiration here. Like we were talking about the chicken tikka whiskey pairing. I am so passionate, as you guys are all very aware of, Indian food, curry is so inherently part of the UK and British culture. Like there's no separating it now. I was asked, I've been asked before about should I stop eating curry because it might damage my ability to nose whiskey, to taste whiskey. But it's so much part of my culture. And what I want is, I'm passionate about people pairing whiskey with curry, with spice foods, with foods that they wouldn't think of. And drinking whiskey, having whiskey at times that they wouldn't normally think of whiskey. So a lot of people still think that whiskey's for the end of the meal. Whiskey's for when you're finished and it's got to be drank in a certain place in a certain way. And I think some of the things that we're working on, so like Johnnie Walker Blonde, hopefully it's opening up the world of whiskey to a new group of people that wouldn't think about drinking scotch, that wouldn't think about whiskey. And I'm looking at that as being accessible, as being able to be mixed, to have when you might have a gin and tonic or a beer. And the reason we do that is so we love our world of whiskey. We, like Johnnie Walker is part of life, we want everyone else to enjoy it as much as we do. And so seeing that and creating whiskies that really bring that to life for people is what is so important. And I think that ties Johnnie Walker and India together so much. It's that exploration of culture, of flavour, and of enjoyment, really.
Music, I think everything.
Oh, yeah.
And which brings me to the latest collaboration that Johnnie Walker Blue Label has done with an immensely talented and proud Indian designer, Rahul Mishra, who's put, I think, Indian fashion on the world stage.
Oh, definitely.
And Blue Label has released a festive pack in collaboration with him. Where do you think this collaboration goes? Does it remain only little packaging? Do we think there'll be limited edition Blue Labels only for Indian market? Where do you see this headed?
I mean, if you see the pack, so we have got the pack here, It is absolutely beautiful. And being able to work with Rahul Mishra and just see how he works, how he creates, is absolutely fantastic. And see how he's taken inspiration from India, from the world around him, and bringing that to life in the bottle is fantastic. And we said before as well that so it's Johnnie Walker Blue Label that we have in that pack, but we're bottling at a slightly higher ABV. So we're very much thinking of celebration in India with intensity of character and flavour. But we are already thinking about what do we do next, how do we work, how do we collaborate. So as I said, we're very lucky to have amazing whiskey makers that we work with in Diageo here in India. So we are working very closely with those guys about what are we going to do for our celebration whiskey in the future. So we are very conscious. As I said before, our team is very pale. We're very British. We need to make sure that we've got cultural inspiration and impact from other parts of the world as well. So it's been wonderful talking to our team in India and thinking about celebration and thinking about the flavours and the food. Again, back to the sweeties. And what do you get from the different celebratory foods as well? How do you bring that to life in the whiskey? So there's something really interesting that's coming that hopefully you'll get to enjoy next year. And I think that's what we need to do as well, is also to see when we do that, how does that whiskey that we create then resonate with other parts of the world as well? So that if we make something great in partnership with India, how do we get that out to other parts of the world and the diaspora, but also to other cultures as well, to appreciate the inspiration, but also the flavours in the whiskey?
I think that sounds wonderful. I am more than looking forward to what comes next after this. But now we almost are at the end of our conversation. When you look back at your journey with, let's say, a glass of Blue Label, yes, what is that one distinct memory that you have of, yes, I think this is what I'm meant to do in life and this is what I am going to enjoy for the rest of my life?
I think whenever I get to reflect on what I'm doing and where I've got to and the amazing whiskies is whenever I pick up a glass of Johnnie Walker, it actually reminds me of friendship. So the people, the community, the team that I get to work with, the people like Jim Beveridge, they've helped to shape who I am today, but we've also shaped them as well, which was really interesting. What it does, whiskey for me, it's about friendship, it's about the people and the place. And I think that's what's so important. And that's what makes whiskey and Johnnie Walker resonate with so many people around the world, is it brings us together and it gives us something to enjoy together.
Whiskey always tastes better with great company.
Exactly.
And if there's one thing that you want to leave the audience with, like one, if they forget everything tomorrow, but it's the one thing that they should remember, and I know you will say two things, but if there's one thing that you want them to take away from tonight, what would that be?
Whiskey's to be enjoyed. Just enjoy it. Just drink it, try it in different ways and just enjoy it.
All right. So yes, now that my questions are over, what we are going to do next is we will start with the dinner service. Emma is going to be around and we are all around. As we go through dinner, if any of you have any questions, please feel free to either walk up to Emma or ask those questions. And once we are through with the dinner, there is a signing. I know a lot of you are carrying beautiful Blue Label bottles that you want Emma to sign for you so that they become a rarity of their own. And
so
then
I was going to say that means you've got to ask me nice questions or we don't get them.
And yes, there'll be a lot of opportunities to ask Emma any questions that you want through the evening. With that, we come to the end of this chat. Emma, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
It was indeed a pleasure to sit here and have another wonderful conversation with you through the evening. And I'm sure you're hungry. So we get you some food, we get you some drinks, and we get the evening started.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Thank you.